book cover design is really, really decided on the genre. So if you're self-publishing and you figure out which audience complements your book the best, you have to kind of dive into that genre and see how everyone else is sort of portraying the same stories or similar stories. It's just like they tell us when we're writing, we should be reading what we write. So it's sort of the same concept. If we're designing, we should be looking at what we designed. The cover to a mystery thriller is going to look totally different from a fantasy, which is going to totally look different from a contemporary romance. It's drastically different. And even within those genres, like a Regency romance versus paranormal romance, those covers are totally different from one another. So decide on your audience. Decide who you're trying to appeal to and what message you're trying to say about the story. And some of the best elements is you should always have clear, concise font. Don't use a bunch of different fonts. Find a font that has different variants of itself. For instance, I think Gill Sans. If you look up that font, there's like 16 different variants where it's the same font, but some are thicker, some are italics, some are bold, some are a little bit of both, some are space wider, some are more condensed, but it's all the same font. And what you do is you use those variants to kind of make sure that you're consistent and it pops. And then if you're doing a series, you gotta kind of like that decision you make for the first book decides the rest of the book. So be very careful. And it shouldn't be hard to tell what letters are there. I know a lot of contemporary romance people want to use these very elegant scripts, but if I can't read your cover amongst a big stack of books across the room, or it doesn't catch my eye enough to walk a few steps closer, if I have to like really, like people don't spend time to try to translate, is that an S or an E or a T? So be careful what you choose. Make sure it's legible. Something my teacher always said, Mr. Cribb, he's like, stay away from red font. He's like, it's harder for older people to read, and it gets washed out so easily depending on your cover and background. So you have to sort of combat it. If you're going to do red font, you kind of have to like find ways to add maybe an outer glow of white to kind of help it pop different. So there's tricks of bending the rules, but if you stick the legible font, it can be fancy, but it's got to be readable, title large, your name large. For print, you also have to consider that you need that font to be useful on a spine or on the back of the book. So it's like, oh, like this looks great on the cover, but when I shrink it down for the spine, I totally lose it. So those are principles. You also can add more on a paperback. So for instance, you'll see the ebook cover and it's very clean with just the title, the cover, and the author's last name or name. But the actual book will have like snippets from reviews because we're trying to bring you close enough to read what awesomeness people have discovered within the pages. Because now you're competing on a bookshelf. It's not standalone. Like when you see a book, you're just getting that quick, JPEG popped up among a line of JPEGs, so you don't have much time. You just want to be loud. So that kind of makes it difficult. And then, so for instance, fantasy romance. I cannot bear the romance trend of naked men and women falling to their knees and dresses undone. I'm like, I can't do it. So I sort of took a more fantasy route. As you can see, it has that medieval feel. It has a shadowed of a sword, and the title speaks more, is reflective of it. It doesn't really scream romance until you read the back blurb or the details on it. But they know they're in for a kitchen sink fantasy. They know this is going to have knights because it's Cedric the Demonic Knight. They know there's demons and monsters involved. But the romance doesn't come until like 2/3 of the book. So I would disappoint a romance reader who's like looking for like immediate love story. So I kind of wanted to warn them, like, though it's written in that style, it's not going to give you the same concept that you've picked up with half naked dudes on the front. Like, I don't want to sell it. Be careful of falsely representing yourself with a cover because of stuff like that. So don't hop on a trend because it works for everyone else, because I have seen reviews where people are like, well, the cover made me think this, but when I started reading it, this was not what I was in for. You know, I can only give it 2 stars because I only got so far. So you don't want to make those mistakes either.